In part 1 of this story, I told you about Chi-Chi, the panda who won not just the hearts of the British people, but those of the numerous international visitors to London Zoo after she moved there in 1958. But what happened next? And did she have any children? I'm Tasmin Little, concert violinist, recording artist, and culture contributor for the China Current. This is my story for you. There's a beautiful simplicity in the giant panda's colours, a distinctive combination of black and white. These contrasting colours are aesthetically pleasing. However, in the wild, they also serve an important and practical purpose, that of camouflage. This juxtaposition of colours was something which attracted me to a miniature watercolour of a panda, a little memento I bought for myself during my first visit to Beijing. This was in 1982, when I went on a cultural exchange with Yehudi Menuhin, the legendary violinist, and some of my fellow students at the Yehudi Menuhin School. The miniature has great charm, styled with characteristic delicate ink brush strokes, and depicting the panda with a few bamboo leaves, one of which he, or she, is cuddling. I have other souvenirs of this visit to China, but my little panda picture sits in a prominent position in my home, and whenever I gaze at it, I'm taken right back to this first direct experience of Chinese culture, aged just 17 years old. It was an experience of music, art, and nature never to be forgotten. There were various attempts to encourage Chi-Chi to mate, and one of these involved a trip in 1966 to visit An, a male panda at the zoo in Moscow. But whilst Chi-Chi and her prospective boyfriend seemed to like each other, it seems Chi-Chi was more intent on playing with An and retaining the upper hand, repeatedly knocking him onto the ground until he gave up trying to be amorous. It was decided that both pandas should come to London, where Chi-Chi might feel more at home, in a final attempt to facilitate breeding. But Chi-Chi was not in a mating mood. Possibly because she was raised by humans and didn't instinctively respond to a male of her own species. So sadly, she never had any children. When Chi-Chi died on the 22nd of July 1972, she was aged about 15 and was thought to be the first giant panda to have lived so long in captivity. Although I was only 7 years old at the time, I remember very clearly the day that she died. I cried watching the news on the television and mourned the loss along with the rest of the country. Although no stranger to being on national news, the loving and plentiful obituaries on television, radio and in the newspapers were a clear indication of the devotion given to her by her adopted country. All these years later, Chi-Chi's legacy lives on. She was the inspiration behind the design of the World Wildlife Fund logo, which has since become an emblem for conservation movements. Sir Peter Scott, who founded the WWF and designed the logo, wanted something beautiful, rare, and loved by many. Today, the giant panda continues to be its logo, a symbol for all conservation, and the need to protect our planet and all its natural inhabitants. As well as her cherished memory living on, Chi-Chi's body is now exhibited in the Natural History Museum in London, giving her loyal fans an opportunity to visit her forevermore. And there is a special opportunity to do that now. In 2019, the museum removed her from her glass cabinet and restored her, ensuring that Chi-Chi can be studied and loved by a next generation. It was a delicate process. First, she was positioned in a wooden frame and wrapped in polythene. Then professional conservators carefully cleaned her using special brushes, sponges and a vacuum. Chi-Chi is back on public display in the Natural History Museum, which is visited by 5 million people a year. As for me, I will always cherish my childhood memory of seeing Chi-Chi at London Zoo. She was not simply a panda, but an iconic member of animal royalty. I'm Tasmin Little, violinist and culture contributor for the China Current. Follow my stories and I look forward to seeing you again.